Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm bringing you another one of my 8 That Are Great mini-series where I just give you 8 great book recommendations within a specific subgenre. And today I'm going to be talking about books that toe the line between historical fiction and fantasy or sci-fi. These are books that are set in a genuine historical time period, but they incorporate some form of speculative, magical or sci-fi based element that kind of creates an alternative history to the one that we know today. The first one I want to talk about is Summerland by Hannu Ranjaniemi. I think I've just pronounced it horribly wrong, apologies. This is set in the aftermath of the First World War, but during the First World War we discovered a technology that meant that we could kind of harness the dead, and it's essentially looking at the beginning parts of the Second World War, but with this ability to communicate with ghosts, have spirits in our world, and also harness spirit energy overlaid over the top. It's a spy espionage book at its heart, and I really enjoyed it. I thought that the world building was very cleverly done. It's the kind of book that doesn't kind of exposition dump at the very beginning. It sort of eases out the information very slowly, and I really enjoyed the various characters that we were working with and looking at like what was going on in Spain just before the start of the Second World War. Hannu Ranjaniemi does some really exciting, very cool, weird stuff in sci-fi, and I definitely recommend checking him out if you do like Summerland as well. He has other things. I've read his one, The Quantum Thief, which I really need to go back and reread because I remember it being really trippy and weird, but I read it so long ago that I'd love to try it again. The next one I have to talk about is Shades of Milk and Honey by Robinette Kowal. This is a Regency romance, but it has magic thrown over the top. So in this world, this is where people can do what are called glamours. They're the glamorous, and it's kind of visual-based magic to create illusions, normally for the purpose of storytelling or for decoration, and it's something that the kind of upper landed gentry use to show off their power and their wealth. And this book really is basically just like a Jane Austen novel with that particular world-building feature overlaid over the top. I really liked the characters. I loved the main character. She was very feisty. She had a real kind of what's her name? Bennett kind of feel to her, and I enjoyed this kind of slow burn romance, and obviously all the period details of kind of the lingering looks, the way that Robinette Kowal built this up. I probably won't actually be continuing with this series because unlike a lot of romance books, this one is going to continue with the same couple and then sort of go on to be more of a like adventure style book, and what I was really hoping for was some of the secondary characters to get their own book in the later series, but that's not what Robinette Kowal's doing here. But it's very short, and it was a really light-hearted, fun take on like fantasy meets Jane Austen basically. The next one I have to talk about is the Paper Magician series by Charlie M. Holmberg, I believe. This one is one that I'm almost hesitant to recommend, but stick with me. It's a YA series that is set in kind of a Victorian England, just sort of around the turn of the century, but it is where we use the elements for magic, but it's not specifically like fire and water and earth, it's more like compound elements. So the Paper Magician is one. You can become a specialist in paper or metal or rubber and plastic or glass, and there's lots of different kind of materials. Now it's a YA series, and Charlie M. Holmberg is not the best of writers when it comes to the plot or the characters. Book 1 especially really is not very well paced and really doesn't hold itself together particularly well, but the series does improve as it goes along. There's like a trilogy and then a standalone, which is the Plastic Magician, and the thing that I really love here is the world building and the magic system. I thought the magic system was just so fascinating and almost like adorable in places, because the Paper Magician relies a lot on origami, and it's kind of considered the weakest of all the different magic systems in this world. And it was fascinating seeing how our main characters, who are these paper magicians, can use what they do to great effect, and it's really about working with what you've got. So you're not here for the plot of the characters, you're here really for the background stuff, but I do think they're really easy to read. I think I blitzed all of them like in about an hour and a half each, and they are fun palette cleansers that I think show a lot of promise. The next book I want to talk about, or series, is the Invisible Library series by Genevieve Cogman. This is a parallel universe type idea where basically the library exists to help balance out two warring factions in the universe, which is the Fae that represent chaos and the dragons that represent order. Now the kind of grounding thing across all these different parallel universes is what books have been published and what differences there are between these kind of classic tomes of literature, and the librarian's job is to make make sure that the worlds stay stabilized, and also to kind of track these variations in books. So you do get a chance across the series to kind of bounce into lots of different time periods and different parallel universes that are designed to mirror our own but have distinct differences. So book 2 that I read most recently was set primarily in Venice, in kind of a time of constant carnival, so you do get these really lovely historical nods and like a need for the characters to have knowledge over the kind of world history, as well as this sort of fun fantasy element to it. The next series I want to talk about is the Winter Night Trilogy. This is book 1, which is The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine and Arden. This is a book that's set in loosely like medieval Russia, and it is about the sort of collision of the old religion, which focuses on all the different folklore from Russia, with the new religion of Christianity. It follows our main character Vasya, who can see the demons of the folklore and kind of chat to them, and it's about the fact that she's kind of considered a bit strange and a bit witchy, and then basically this gentleman comes to her town and he is a Christian, and it's about an underlying sort of myth as well, sort of a fight between two ancient brothers. I'm probably explaining this really badly. I love this series. I think it is so stunning and atmospheric and really creepy and spooky, and I love the whole series overall, and it really is that wonderful nod of like, here is a bunch of history of sort of old Russia, but with all the boyars and the different kind of factions, but also with this overlay of like the folklore being real and the demons having the ability to manipulate the world and the people within it and kind of have a real say across history. So I think it's fantastic for both of those facts. The next one I wanted to mention is Rotherweird by Caldecott. This is part of a series, but I've only read book 1, and this is a historical fiction with 2 timelines going on, but both of them set historically. So one of them is in like the 30s, but kind of around that sort of an era, and then the other one is in the 1500s with Elizabeth I. And basically what it is there is some kind of freaky children who have weird powers that Elizabeth I is like, we need to get rid of these guys, let's just shove them in a village called Rotherweird. And then many years later, this gentleman comes to town, to Rotherweird, and tries to get to know the sort of the locals who are there, the people who've lived there all their lives, and like, what is going on and what is so strange and why there's so many secrets in this town. It's very cool and really creepy, and I deeply enjoyed it. It has like Islands of Dr. Moreau kind of elements to it. Really good fun, and I'm very excited to jump in with the next one in this series, and I did enjoy the 2 kind of running timelines that we got to see in this. The next one I want to talk about was one of my all-time favourite reads of 2000, and I want to say 18 now actually, and that is The Golem and the Genie by Helene Wecker. This is a glorious, super atmospheric, really just lovely, heartwarming historical fantasy, which is set in New York, primarily in the very turn of the century, like super late 1800s going into the 1900s. It follows 2 main characters, a golem and a genie. So a golem is a creature that has been made of kind of stone and clay that is supposed to follow a master, but when her master dies super early on in the book, she suddenly has freedom and has to try and sort of create a life for herself in New York. She also along her way meets a genie who is kind of riffing off the idea of a genie, and it's about him. He's been released finally from imprisonment for a while, and it's about him trying to create a life for himself, and it's about their crossing paths. I loved all the different like historical details. I loved seeing sort of New York such a long time ago and seeing how the city was really developing and the very sort of social pressures that were on the 2 of them, and I really love this series. I think both the characters are gorgeous and stunning, and this is just such a good book. It in theory has a sequel coming out, but the sequel keeps being pushed back like every year. It's the following year, so eventually we'll get to see these characters again soon, but God knows when, and I really can't wait. And then the final one I almost hesitated to put on this list because it's slightly breaking the rules a little bit, but I think it still counts, and that is the Demi Monday series by Rees. So this is like a sci-fi, but it has huge chunks of historical information within it and historical characters, which is why I think it still counts in this sort of subsection of books that I'm talking about. It's in a world where the kind of politicians have created this war game type scenario where they've created artificial intelligences that are supposed to be representing various terrible people from history. So you've got people like Genghis Khan, Henry VIII, Hermann Goering, and they basically thrown them into one big world to watch to see like how things play out and what they can learn from these different artificial intelligences. But in some weird freaky twist of the artificial intelligence gaining too much knowledge and too much power, the president's daughter has been sucked into this game, and they need to send an operative in to go and rescue her. So that's where our main character comes in. She is embodying I think Marie Laveau at some point. I vaguely remember Marie Laveau popping up. So it's lots of really interesting real people from history being chucked into this historical artificial setting where different time periods kind of cross over, and there's sort of different areas of it with different levels of technology. It's really good fun. I've read the first at least 2, maybe 3 books. They are big books. They are beefy boys, just be aware of that. And I really need to go back and reread them so that I can finish off the series, but I just don't know when I'm gonna have the energy, and I've lost my copy of all of them. I think they got destroyed in the flood that took out most of my book collection a couple of years ago, so I'm gonna have to get myself another copy of them. But yeah, so that is it from me. These are a collection of historical fantasy / sci-fi books. Now, I haven't included on this list a lot that are kind of set in alternative universes that are supposed to loosely mirror our own but have different words in different countries. So things like the Lady Trent series or Witchmark could have probably quite easily made it onto this list, but I wanted to focus on ones that are set in actual places and time periods in the world's actual history, but with just a slight twist to them. And I think that these are a really great way if you are somebody who either reads a lot of historical fiction but is a bit put off by fantasy, or indeed vice versa, and they're a nice way of kind of bridging the gap between 2 different genres if you want to sort of expand your reading. So that's it from me. Have a wonderful reading week, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye!